Thank
Privileged to do it, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Whip. Senator Wicker.
Thank you very much, General. The compliments and best wishes on both sides of the aisle from this committee are heartfelt and genuine, and I hope you hear them and I hope you understand them. I do admire you unqualifiedly and appreciate what you're doing. Let me first of all echo what Senator Webb said about the rules of engagement. We should never have rules that put our troops in danger in the hope that we're winning hearts and minds. We ought to win hearts and minds among the Afghans, but we need to make sure that our rules of engagement protect our troops. You said you are going to look very hard at this issue. I would assume, and I'm not asking a question here, but I would assume that means we're going to look very hard at maybe altering or amending those rules of engagement and applying them uniformly across the board.
It's the latter piece of it, Senator. Again, I think rules of engagement are pretty straightforward, and again, they don't vary enormously from place to place. Our troopers have been exercising similar rules of engagement in these various campaigns in recent years. What we need to do is ensure that the application of them, and as importantly, the tactical directive, which talks about the use of close air support and other, again, enablers, as we term them, that is uniform, and that, again, there are not leaders at certain levels that are imposing additional checks and balances at times when lives are on the line, and that's the real key. If I could also touch on one other topic, though, it is not mutually exclusive that you can ensure the security of the population, minimize the loss of innocent civilian life, and also ensure that you bring whatever is necessary to bear when your troopers are in a tough spot. Do we take a risk in military operations? Of course we do. I mean, in any operation. The minute you go outside the gate, if you don't want to take risk, I mean, then you shouldn't be there in the first place. That's what we do. But we have a solemn obligation, really a moral imperative, to ensure that when our troopers and our Afghan partners are in a tough spot, that we do what is necessary to support them in those tough spots. It's also important that they understand, again, the context in which they're operating. I mean, there are examples, for example, examples such as a house, and you're taking fire from the house. Now, our impulse is to take the fight to the enemy. We close with and destroy the enemy in the infantry. That's our motto, this kind of thing. Well, this is not conventional combat, and if there are civilians in the house, if you don't know who's in the house, you really do need to think twice before you take out the house if that fire on you is not pinning you down. Maybe you want to break contact, keep the house under observation for a while. But that's the kind of what our soldiers, and our soldiers are magnificent. As I mentioned, they're the most combat experienced force and the finest force our nation has ever fielded. They can understand the intent, on the one hand, to minimize loss of innocent civilian life, and on the other hand, to make sure that we do whatever is necessary if they get in a tight spot.
Well, thank you, General. That was not going to be my question, but it's such an important issue.
It is an important
topic,
I Thank you.
Felt it was important to go ahead and let you enlarge on that. Let me say also, I take your testimony about the timelines at face value. And you said 2 weeks ago that in an ideal world, timelines aren't the best, are not.
I said I think you have to think hard about them or something like that. It wasn't quite what you said, but something.
But
like
you've talked about a responsible drawdown. 2011 will begin a process, but that our relationship and our partnership in Afghanistan is going to be an enduring one, and the Taliban and other enemies should not doubt our resolve. And so I take that at face value. I want to read some excerpts from Wall Street Journal today by Brett Stevens, and he speaks pretty plain. Free speech is great in the United States. He says, with a wink of its left eye, the Obama administration tells its liberal base that a year from now, the U.S. will be heading for a quick Afghan exit. Everyone knows there's a firm date, insists White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel. With a wink of its right eye, the administration tells Afghanistan, Pakistan, NATO allies, and its own military leadership that the July 2011 date is effectively meaningless. The notion that a major drawdown will begin next year absolutely has not been decided, says Defense Secretary Robert Gates. The problem with this is it appears from what we're learning from the Speaker of the House today that a wink to the left may not be sufficient, and that there is a move afoot in the other body to use the power of the purse to impose timelines that the administration has not agreed to, that you would feel uncomfortable with. And I don't think it's your role as general to call for vetoes of legislation, but it is the role of the Secretary of Defense and the President. And I would hope that they make it clear that such restrictions on a war funding bill by the House of Representatives would be unacceptable and should be and would be vetoed should they reach the President's desk. The article goes on to say General Petraeus won in Iraq because George W. Bush had his back, and the people of Iraq, friend and foe, knew it. By contrast, the fact that we've been unable to secure the small city of Marja, much less take on the larger job of Kandahar, is because nobody, right down to the village folk, believes that Barack Obama believes in his own war. Let me say this. There's no better fighting force in the history of the planet than the American fighting force in Iraq today. We are fighting an enemy that has 10% support among the Afghan people. There's no way on earth that our fighting force can lose this war. The only way that our effort can be unsuccessful is that if we have a government in Washington, D.C. that is unworthy of that fighting force. And I want to be part of a bipartisan team that gives you the resources and the time to accomplish the mission. Now, since the General took a moment to talk about rules of engagement, let me just ask you this. Could you comment, compare and contrast the relationship you had in Iraq between you as the General and General Crocker, and the approach that has been used in Afghanistan between General McChrystal and Ambassador Eikenberry? What lessons can we learn from your experience with Ambassador Crocker in Iraq? And what do you hope the civilian-military relationship will look like now that you're headed back to Afghanistan?
Well, let me just reiterate, if I could, what I said in my opening statement about being committed to forging a civil-military partnership, to achieving unity of effort between the civilian and military elements, and not just between U.S. military and civilian, but between the ISAF military and the international civilian efforts, and then, of course, between those efforts and those of our Afghan partners. I think I may have mentioned that in past several days, without presuming confirmation, I have had conversations with, in fact, we did four-way conversations. We had Ambassador Eikenberry, Ambassador Holbrooke, and General Lute, and myself on the phone. These have been quite productive. This is, I think, the way to go about it so that everyone is all on there. Ambassador Eikenberry is going, if confirmed, depending on how rapidly, we have various timelines. The intent is to stop in Brussels on the way to meet with the Secretary General of NATO, the Chairman of the Military Committee, the permanent representatives of the North Atlantic Council, the military representatives, and so forth. Having talked to the Secretary General, the Chairman, and then the NATO chain of command, the SACEUR, and the Commander of Joint Forces Command Brunsum, General Roms, who's the ISAF boss on the NATO chain. Ambassador Eikenberry will join me in Brussels, and we'll huddle there after the activities with NATO, and then fly into Kabul together. Ambassador Mark Sedwell, the NATO senior civilian representative for ISAF, will do the same. So again, I think that there is every intent, again, and everyone has committed to forging this civil-military partnership that can help us achieve unity of effort on the U.S. and international side, and then, as I said, unity of effort with our Afghan partners as well.
Will you be applying lessons learned between you and Ambassador Crocker?
Oh, of course, and I mean, lessons
Iraq.
learned from that, from study of history, of watching other circumstances, watching it in Iraq in previous assignments there and so forth as well, without question. And in Bosnia and Haiti and Kuwait and a variety of other places too, Central America for that matter.
Wish you the very, very best, and want to be helpful in any way. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. Senator Udall.
Good afternoon, General. Thank you for being here today, and I want to share this